There's something about the way fluorescent lights hum in shopping malls that makes everything feel a little unreal. I've been thinking about that sound lately. That constant buzz just beneath the music, and the chatter, and the shuffle of feet on polished floors. It's always there, if you listen for it. A reminder that beneath the bright surfaces and the cheerful displays, there's a current running through everything. Invisible, constant, sometimes dangerous if you touch it wrong. I used to spend a lot of time at the Riverside Mall when I was younger. Not shopping, really, just existing in a space that wasn't home and wasn't school. Somewhere in between. The food court became my library. The fountain where people threw pennies and made wishes became my thinking spot. I still go sometimes. Not as often. But when the world feels too loud or too quiet, I find myself there, sitting on one of those uncomfortable benches near the fountain, watching people move through their days, carrying bags full of things they may or may not need, looking for something they might not be able to name. That's where I was last month when it happened. It was a Thursday afternoon. The mall was that particular kind of busy that comes between lunch and dinner, when school's out, but the dinner rush hasn't started yet. Teenagers clustered in groups near the arcade. Parents pushed strollers past window displays. Elderly couples walked their laps for exercise, moving slowly, holding hands like they were still learning each other's rhythms. I was sitting near the fountain with a book I wasn't really reading, just watching the light change as it filtered through the skylights, watching people be people. That's when I noticed him. A kid, maybe 16, 17. Tall and thin in that way teenagers are when they're still growing into their bodies. He wore a hoodie that had seen better days and jeans with a tear in one knee that didn't look fashionable, just worn. His sneakers were old, but clean. Very clean. Like someone had scrubbed them carefully, even though the fabric was separating from the sole. He was standing outside a clothing store called Bennett's. It's been there forever, one of those family-owned places that somehow survived when all the chains moved in. The window displays were never quite as polished as the big stores, but there was something honest about it. Real people wore those clothes. Real people could afford them. The kid was looking in the window with an expression I recognized. Want mixed with something harder. Resignation, maybe. Or that particular kind of math teenagers do when they're trying to figure out if they can afford something they need. He stood there for a long time. Long enough that I started paying attention. Long enough that I saw him reach into his pocket, pull out what looked like a few crumpled bills, count them twice, then put them back. Then he walked into the store. I shouldn't have kept watching. Should have gone back to my book, minded my own business. But there was something about him that reminded me of myself at that age. That careful way of moving through the world, like you're trying not to take up too much space. Like you're apologizing for existing just by existing. Through the store window, I could see him browsing, touching fabrics gently, checking price tags, moving slowly through the racks. A sales associate approached him. Young woman with a name tag I couldn't read from this distance. She said something. He shook his head, gestured that he was just looking. She walked away, but I saw her glance back at him. Saw her say something to another employee. Saw that employee pick up a phone. My stomach tightened. I knew that sequence. Everyone who's ever been poor knows that sequence. The kid kept browsing, picked up a shirt, a simple button-down, nothing fancy. The kind you'd wear to a job interview or a school event where you needed to look put together. He held it up against himself, checking the fit in a mirror. For just a moment, his face changed, softened, like he was imagining himself in that shirt, imagining being the kind of person who owned shirts like that. Then he checked the price tag, and his face closed again. He put the shirt back, started to leave. That's when the security guard appeared. His name was Mitchell. I'd seen him around the mall for years. Big guy, probably in his 50s, with a gray mustache and the kind of presence that said he took his job seriously. Not aggressive, usually, but thorough, watchful. He stepped in front of the kid just as he reached the store entrance. "Excuse me, son," he said. His voice carried across the space. People started to notice. "I need you to come with me." The kid froze. "Why?" "Need to check your bag," Mitchell said. Not unkind, but firm. Official. Just routine. "I didn't take anything," the kid said. His voice cracked a little on the words. That teenage break between childhood and wherever comes after. "Then you won't mind showing me your bag." A crowd was forming now. People always gather for this kind of thing, this public shame, this theater of accusation. I stood up from my bench, moving closer without really deciding to. The kid's hands were shaking as he took off his backpack. "I didn't take anything," he said again, louder this time. But there was something else in his voice now. Not anger. Fear, maybe. Or the exhaustion of being suspected just for existing. Mitchell took the bag, started going through it. School books, a water bottle, a container that probably held someone's homemade lunch, a calculator, a notebook with a torn cover. No shirt, no merchandise, nothing that didn't belong to him. "Empty your pockets," Mitchell said. "This is ridiculous," the kid said, but he did it. Pulled out his phone. The crumpled bills I'd seen earlier, 3 ones and some change. A chapstick. A folded piece of paper that looked like it might be homework. Still nothing. Mitchell's face didn't change. "Lift up your hoodie." That's when I saw it. The flash of something in the kid's eyes. Not guilt, humiliation, the kind that burns. "Why?" the kid asked. "I showed you everything. I didn't take anything." "Just need to be thorough," Mitchell said. The crowd was bigger now. 20 people, maybe more, all watching, all judging, all seeing this kid being searched like a criminal in the middle of their pleasant Thursday afternoon. The kid lifted his hoodie. Nothing underneath except a t-shirt that was also worn but clean, so carefully clean. "Turn around," Mitchell said. I wanted to say something, wanted to step forward and tell Mitchell that this was enough, that he'd proven his point, that this kid was clearly innocent, and this was just cruelty now. But I didn't. Just stood there, like everyone else, watching someone else's dignity get stripped away piece by piece. The kid turned around slowly. His face was red. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. "Satisfied?" he asked quietly. Mitchell looked uncomfortable now, maybe realizing he'd gone too far. Maybe just annoyed that he'd been wrong. "You can go," he said. The kid started gathering his things, shoving them back into his backpack with shaking hands, dropping the chapstick and having to bend down to pick it up while everyone watched. The crumpled bills scattered and he scrambled to collect them, while people stood there, not helping, just observing his humiliation like it was entertainment. That's when the store owner came out. His name was David Bennett. I knew because I'd been shopping at his store for 20 years. Had watched his kids grow up working the registers during summer breaks. Had seen his hair go from brown to gray to white. He'd always been kind, quiet, the type who remembered names and asked about your mother's surgery or your daughter's wedding. He was probably in his 70s now. Short, slight, with a cardigan over his shirt and glasses that sat crooked on his nose. He looked like someone's grandfather, gentle, safe. He walked through the crowd like they weren't there, walked straight to the kid who was still on his knees, collecting his money from the floor. "Excuse me," David said softly. The kid looked up. His eyes were wet, but he hadn't let himself cry. Wouldn't let himself cry in front of all these people. "I'm David Bennett," he said, holding out his hand. "I own this store." The kid stared at the offered hand, like it might be a trick, but he took it. Let David help him to his feet. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," David said. Still soft, still gentle. But there was something else underneath now. Something that made Mitchell take a step back. "He was acting suspicious," Mitchell started to explain. "Employee called it in, said he was, What?" David interrupted. His voice hadn't gotten louder. Somehow, that made it more powerful. "Said he was shopping while young? Shopping while wearing old clothes? Shopping while being unable to afford everything his eyes landed on?" Mitchell's face reddened. "We have procedures." "Your procedures," David said, each word careful and deliberate. Just humiliated an innocent child in front of 50 people because he had the audacity to look at clothing he couldn't afford. The crowd was silent now. Not the excited silence of watching a spectacle, but something else. Something uncomfortable. Like maybe they were realizing they'd been part of something ugly. David turned to the kid. "What's your name, son?" The kid hesitated. "Marcus," he said finally. "Marcus," David repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I owe you an apology. This is my store, my employees, my responsibility, and you were treated inexcusably." "I didn't take anything," Marcus said for the third time. And hearing it again like that, this kid, who'd already proven his innocence still needing to defend himself, made something crack in my chest. "I know you didn't," David said. "And I'm so sorry you were treated like you did." He turned back to Mitchell. "This young man is no longer your concern. If you need to speak to someone about this, you can speak to me." Mitchell opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then closed it, nodded once, walked away, the crowd parting for him. David turned back to Marcus. "Would you come inside with me? Please, just for a moment." Marcus looked wary, like this might be another trick, another humiliation waiting to unfold. "I promise," David said. "No tricks, no trouble. Just let me do something, please." I don't know why Marcus agreed. Maybe he was too tired to argue. Maybe something in David's face told him this was different. But he followed David into the store. And I followed too. Part of the crowd that was still lingering, still watching, though the energy had shifted to something else now. Inside the store, David led Marcus to the section where the button-down shirts were displayed. The same section Marcus had been browsing before all of this started. "You were looking at this one, I think," David said, pulling out the shirt Marcus had held up to himself earlier. "The blue one." Marcus didn't say anything, just stood there with his arms wrapped around himself like he was cold, despite the warmth of the store. "It's a good shirt," David continued. "Simple, well made, the kind that'll last you a long time, if you take care of it." He held it out. "I'd like you to have it." "I can't afford it," Marcus said quietly. "I know," David said. "That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to take it, as an apology. From me, from this store, from all of us, I suppose, for what just happened to you." Marcus shook his head. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," David said. "It's an apology. It's me trying to fix something that shouldn't have been broken in the first place." They stood there, facing each other. The old man holding the shirt, the teenager holding his ground. Something happening between them that was about more than just a piece of clothing. Finally, David said, "How old are you, Marcus?" 17. "Do you have a job?" "Not yet. I've been applying. Got an interview next week at the grocery store." David nodded slowly. "That's why you needed the shirt." It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. "Yeah, my mom said I needed to look professional, but we can't really afford. I was going to save up, but the interview's Tuesday and He trailed off, looking down at his worn sneakers. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My father opened this store in 1967. I was about your age. We didn't have much. He worked 2 jobs to afford the inventory. My mother sewed alterations in the back room. I worked the register, after school, weekends, every spare moment." He gestured around the store. "All of this was built on other people giving us chances we didn't quite deserve yet. On people who saw my father, an immigrant with an accent and empty pockets, and decided to treat him with dignity anyway, to give him credit when he needed it, to wish him well, rather than expect him to fail." Marcus was listening now, really listening. "I've spent 50 years trying to pay that forward," David continued, "trying to be for other people what those people were for my father. And today, in my store, you were treated the opposite of how my father was treated. You were assumed to be a thief, searched, humiliated, all because you had the audacity to want something you couldn't afford yet." He held out the shirt again. "So I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you what my father was offered: dignity, a chance, someone believing you're worth more than your worst moment or your empty pockets." Marcus's eyes were wet again. This time, he didn't try to hide it. "Please," David said, "take the shirt, wear it to your interview, get that job. And someday, when you can, do the same for someone else who needs it." Marcus took the shirt, held it carefully, like it was made of something more fragile than fabric. "And one more thing," David said. He went to the register, came back with a card and a pen, wrote something on it. "This is my number. You call me after your interview on Tuesday. Let me know how it went. And if you don't get that job, you come see me. I've been needing help here for a while. Can't pay much to start, but it's honest work, fair wages. And I promise you'll be treated with respect." Marcus stared at the card like it might disappear if he blinked. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you doing this?" David smiled, sad and kind at the same time. "Because you remind me of my father. Because you remind me of myself. Because someone did it for us once. And the only way to honor that is to keep doing it." He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "And because what happened to you today was wrong. And I'm old enough to know that most of the time we can't fix the wrongs in this world. But sometimes we get a chance to repair one small piece, to turn something ugly into something that might be beautiful. And when we get that chance, we should take it." Marcus nodded, couldn't seem to speak, just nodded and held the shirt and the card like they were lifelines. "Now go," David said gently. "Get ready for that interview. And remember, you walk in there with your head high. You didn't do anything wrong today. The world did something wrong to you. Don't carry that shame. It doesn't belong to you." Marcus left, walked past the crowd that had thinned but was still watching, walked past the spot where he'd been searched, walked out into the mall with the shirt in a bag and David's card in his pocket, and something different in his posture. Not quite confidence yet, but maybe the beginning of it, the possibility of it. I stayed, couldn't quite bring myself to leave yet. David noticed me, recognized me, I think, from all the years I'd been shopping there. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. "Don't be," I said. "I'm glad I did. I'm glad you—" I couldn't quite find the words. "I was so angry," he said quietly. "When my employee called security, when I saw what was happening, I was furious. At Marcus? No, at us, at all of us. At a world that teaches us to suspect each other first and ask questions later. At systems that profile and punish people for being young or poor, or just wanting things they can't afford yet." He shook his head. "That could have been my father, could have been me, could have been my grandson." "It was kind," I said, "what you did." "It was necessary," he corrected gently. "Kindness is for when you have a choice. This was just basic human decency, the bare minimum of how we should treat each other." He looked tired suddenly, old in a way he hadn't looked before. "I wonder how many other kids have been stopped, searched, humiliated. How many left feeling like criminals for the crime of wanting, for the crime of not having enough." "You can't fix all of it," I said. "I know," he said, "but I could fix this one, today. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Fix the one in front of us, and trust that other people are fixing the ones in front of them." That was 3 weeks ago. I've been back to the mall a few times since then. Sat on my bench near the fountain, watched people move through their days. And I've thought a lot about what I witnessed, about how quick we are to assume the worst of each other, how we've built systems that prioritize suspicion over trust, how we punish poverty instead of addressing it, how we humiliate people and call it security, how we've normalized cruelty as long as it's efficient. But I've also thought about David, about the way he stepped into that ugliness and refused to let it stand, the way he saw a kid in worn clothes and recognized his own father's story, the way he understood that dignity costs nothing but means everything. I went to Bennett's last week, needed some new clothes for a family event. David was there, working the register. He rang up my purchase and asked about my mother. Remembered she'd been sick last time we talked. "She's better," I said. "Thank you for asking." As he was bagging my items, I said, "Did you hear from him, Marcus?" David's face lit up. "I did. Called me Tuesday evening. Said the interview went well. Said they offered him the job." "That's wonderful," I said. "It is," David agreed. "But you know what he said that really got me? He said, 'I wore the shirt you gave me. But more than that, I wore the way you treated me. Like I mattered, like I was worth something.' And I think they saw that." David's eyes were bright. "That's what I've been thinking about. How we can't always give people things, money, jobs, opportunities. But we can always give them dignity. We can always treat them like they matter. And sometimes, that's the thing that changes everything." I've been carrying that with me. That idea that the way we treat each other isn't just about politeness or manners or social niceties. It's about recognizing humanity, about refusing to let systems dehumanize people just because it's easier or more efficient or protects the comfortable. The mall still hums with fluorescent lights, still buzzes with that current running underneath everything, and people still move through it, carrying their wants and needs and empty pockets and full hearts. But now, when I sit on my bench by the fountain, I watch for the kids who stand outside stores a little too long, the ones who touch things gently and check price tags twice, the ones who are doing that particular math of wanting versus affording. And I try to see them the way David saw Marcus, not as potential problems, not as people to be managed or monitored or suspected, but as people, just people, trying to get by, trying to grow up, trying to become someone they can be proud of in a world that doesn't always make that easy. Last week I saw a young girl do exactly what Marcus had done. Stand outside a store, count her money, walk in with hope, and walk out with resignation. I almost let her pass, almost minded my own business. But then I thought about David, about how he said all we can do is fix the one in front of us. So I followed her, caught up with her near the food court. "Excuse me," I said. She turned, wary, probably wondering what she'd done wrong. "I saw you looking in that store," I said. "The shoe store. Were you shopping for something specific?" She hesitated. Then, "Interview shoes. I have a job interview next week, but they're too expensive." I smiled, thought about David and his father, and all the people who'd been given dignity when they needed it most. "What size do you wear?" I asked. Her eyes widened. I don't need charity." "It's not charity," I said, hearing David's words in my own voice. "It's just someone who was helped once trying to help someone else. That's all. That's how this works." We went back to the store together, found shoes that fit, good ones that would last. I paid while she tried not to cry. At the register, she said, "Why are you doing this?" And I told her the same thing David had told Marcus, about dignity, about chances, about how we're supposed to treat each other, about how kindness isn't optional. It's necessary. It's the thing that holds the world together when everything else is trying to tear it apart. She left with her shoes, and I left with something lighter in my chest, like I'd put down a weight I didn't know I was carrying. The evening's settling now. The mall will close soon. The lights will dim. The stores will lock their doors. Tomorrow, it will all start again. The wanting, the needing, the careful math of survival. But somewhere tonight, Marcus is probably getting ready for another shift at the grocery store, wearing that shirt, carrying that dignity, learning that he was worth the kindness shown to him. And somewhere, that girl is probably holding her new shoes, practicing her interview answers, getting ready to walk into a room with her head high because someone treated her like she mattered. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how we change things. Not all at once. Not through grand gestures or systemic overhauls, but through small moments of choosing humanity over suspicion, dignity over judgment, connection over cruelty, one person at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time, to be more like David and less like the world that teaches us to assume the worst. The fluorescent lights still hum. That current still runs underneath everything. But maybe, if we're paying attention, if we're brave enough to step in when it matters, we can make sure it shocks a little less often. We can make sure that when people leave our presence, whether from our stores or our conversations or our brief encounters at shopping mall fountains, they leave carrying something beautiful instead of something that burns. I think I'll come back next week, sit on my bench, watch people move through their days, and wait to see who needs to be reminded that they matter. There's something healing in that kind of witnessing, don't you think? In choosing to see people, in refusing to look away, in being ready to step forward when dignity needs defending. The mall is closing now. Time to head home. But I'll be back. Someone might need reminding that they're worth more than their empty pockets. And I've learned from the best how to deliver that message.